Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Melissa, but subscribers can call me Missy. Today I have a very theatrical sewing mystery for you. So, take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. The show's about to begin. I took on a case at the local community theater where strange things were happening. The company was preparing to put on a modern interpretation of a 16th century interpretation of a Christmas version of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and things were going missing from the costume department. In fact, things were going missing so quickly and so mysteriously, it was causing the old costumer, Betsy, to believe that she was getting dementia, and it sent her into an early retirement. The only way to get to the bottom of things was to go undercover, and that meant going back to her. How do I always get myself into these situations? Starting out, I have this king-size fitted bed sheet, which I've already disassembled, which is why it's no longer looking like a fitted bed sheet on the edges. And it is about a 50-50 cotton linen blend. So this is what I'm working with right now. And I need to get started on measuring and cutting out pieces. So of course, while editing this, I realized that I never actually said what I would be making in this video or with this bed sheet. And I ain't gonna tell you either. It's a mystery. Just kidding. I'll let you know. I'm making a chemise, which is a key costuming component in every modern interpretation of a 16th century interpretation of a Christmas version of A Midsummer Night's Dream, in case you were wondering. But I think it'll also come in handy whenever I want to wear, I don't know, Ren Fair outfits. And of course, like any good citizen, I love myself a Renaissance Fair outfit. Here is the pattern that I found on Pinterest that I used to help me to create this chemise. And I will go ahead and link that image or the website where that image can be found in the description below. While the pattern does provide lengths of measurements for each of the components, I went ahead and measured things out for myself just to make sure that I would be happy with the lengths of, say, the sleeves. And because linen played a major role in the fiber content of this, it was rather wobbly. And so I did make an attempt to pull a thread in order to get a straight line across the fabric, but it kept breaking, so I gave up on that. And you know what? Who needs straight lines when you're cutting out squares of fabric? Not me. Because this chemise pattern goes hard, I realized that rectangularly, the short end is actually the length of the sleeve down my arm, and the wide measurement is actually the measurement around the sleeve. I'm not sure that that makes any sense. You saw me laying on the fabric. Hopefully that helped to clarify things. I measured, remeasured, and marked out where I would be cutting with chalk before I went ahead and made my cuts. At this point, the largest pieces were cut out for the body and for the sleeves. I went ahead and started cutting out gores after thoroughly rechecking my pattern. I didn't follow the measurements in the pattern exactly just because the dimensions of my leftover pieces of fabric were not conducive to doing that. But I still really wanted those gores for just some extra volume in the skirt portion of the chemise. I pretty much just used my ruler to mark out a somewhat triangular shape onto my fabric and then cut that out. I then held my freshly cut gores up to my body to see what the dimensions looked like compared to my body. I also cut out some squares to serve as the underarm gussets, and I was ready to sew everything together. At this point, I was careful to follow the pattern instructions as to how to overlap the body rectangles with the sleeve rectangles. I then laid everything out on my floor and pinned the armpit gussets into place. Having everything laid out on my floor like this helped me to visualize how everything needed to come together. Because with this much fabric, it starts to feel really complicated when it's sitting on your lap in front of the sewing machine. With pins in place, it's time to get back to the sewing machine. And in case you wanted a better view of those armpit gussets, here it is. I'm just doing a quick pre-sewing machine inspection and pulling out the top pin in preparation for feeding it into the machine. From there, I just stop sewing at each corner before turning the square and then feeding it through the machine again. Rinse and repeat. With the gussets done, I can move on to the gores on the sides of the chemise. All right, I have this thing. Why don't I try it on? Here it is. It's so massive, which I love. These sleeves are way long, which is good because when I wear it with a costume with all of my cutout things on it, I've got to gather all this stuff up and then it'll look more like this. I'll look like a toddler dressed up in a sheet for a Christmas pageant or something, which is the goal, really. Let's get it done! I needed to cut a long, thin strip of fabric in order to serve as the binding for the gathers around the neck and the top of the sleeve area. After my little strip was cut out, I went ahead and used the pattern to mark out and then cut out the front and back necklines in the chemise. Once again, for this process, I used a ruler and some chalk to mark out where I needed to cut and then just cut along that line. Off camera, I took the long, thin strip of fabric that I had cut out earlier down to my hot iron and ironed down the edges of that strip. I then sewed a very thin rolled hem all along the neckline of the chemise. I started out doing this by pinning it down first before running it through the machine, but I would eventually revert to just kind of rolling it as I went along and just hoping for the best. And actually, I feel like that strategy worked out quite well. I was happy with the final result, and it saved me quite a bit of time. And here is a closer look at that whole process of folding and then getting it to go through the machine. Basically, pinning it in place just adds a couple extra steps, namely the pinning and then the removal of the pins as I feed it through the machines. But once I got the whole thing hemmed, I went ahead and switched to the longest stitch length on my machine and did 2 rows of stitches so that I could gather up the very large neckline. Okay, I have it gathered up now. One of the issues is this top part keeps kind of falling down, which when I'm wearing stays, that'll keep it in place. So I'm not too worried about that. It is a little more low in the back, so I think I can take in the sleeves just another inch or 2, and that would actually even help with the top. So actually maybe like 4 inches in the sleeves. It's coming together!
Here you can see that my binding was really just pinned in place for that try-on. So all I had to do was unpin it, and then I could pull at the threads that I had sewn in there that are creating those gathers, just to get it to the measurements that I want it to be.
This is much better. There it is in the back. Yes, yes. This will do. Now I just have to sew all of this down. So let's do it.
So it's back to the sewing machine for more edge of your seat footage of me just sewing down all of that binding to lock my gathers in place. And in this instance, the pins actually saved me time, because rather than having to seam rip and re-sew things, I was able to just have things pinned in place to make sure that everything would fit correctly. So it's true, as they say, you got to know when to pin them, know when to sew them, know when to plan ahead, when to wing the whole thing. Anyways, I sewed around the entire neckline twice and then went ahead and cut off the excess and sewed that down into place as well. Anyways, I did a bunch of sewing off camera, and this is just me hand stitching down the little edge that turns into the cuff so that I can get my hands in and out of the sleeve. Despite my undercover work, things continued to go missing in the costume department. At first, it was mostly only small things. Not inexpensive necessarily, but easy to replace. But then one night when I was working late, the thief took it too far. Despite running to investigate the noise, I could find no trace of anything that could have made it.
What in the modern interpretation is this? Hello, it is another day and we're switching gears today. I finished the chemise last night, mostly off camera because I need more battery packs, and that's the problem now. Hi. Love you too. Now what I'm trying to get done is I'm making some short stays because I want to make some Ren Fair outfits, and Italian Renaissance dresses just have the empire waist. I have this curtain. It is 100% cotton. I would prefer to use a white fabric. I don't think I have suitable white fabric. I am trying to use up my fabric stash, so we're using what I have, and what I have is this curtain. I don't think we're gonna have time this week to make a mock-up, so hopefully I make it and it fits me perfectly and there are no notes. Let's get into it.
I got my pattern for my stays from redthreaded.com. They are an amazing resource if you are interested in making your own stays or corsets or historical underpinnings. I will include a link to their website down below. You can check that out if you are interested. Anyways, I pinned down my pattern pieces and cut them each out of my fabric. It is time to assemble my pieces. I have a back piece and a side piece. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna lick them and stick them. So there you go. All stuck together, easy as that. Actually, I sewed them. I need to keep sewing
here we go.
If you made it past that point in the video, go ahead and comment down below a quick, why are you like this? Except don't actually comment that, because I'm going to forget that I told you to comment that, and then I'll think that you're just being mean and I won't know how to respond. So instead of commenting that, go ahead and comment like a tongue emoji, which is kind of weird. I don't know. You can do it if you want. Anyway, here I am cutting slits in my stays in order to make way for the gores that are going to go in place there. However, this felt really odd to me. I didn't enjoy this part. It was just so unfamiliar, but it wasn't actually as bad as I thought it was going to be in my mind when I was thinking about doing this. I figured it out. It worked out okay. And here again, you can see me using pins. When in doubt, pin it out. Or pin it up. Anyways, what I did here was I top stitched all around the edge of the slit over top of my gore piece. Or pieces, rather, because there was 4 of them.
Hello and welcome to This Blind Lighting Isn't Fake. I hope that some of the footage I shot last night is usable because it was dark in here. This is my weird rig, but you can see that it's a light. Now here is my electrical outlet. Do you see how this plug is just hanging? I need new outlets. Back on track. Here is what I have sewn together. This flip-flops because it's got these gores in it, or gussets, or gores. I think they're gores. This puppy is sewn together. I've got these end pieces sewn. I do need to sew down some channels. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna need to I'm gonna need to seam rip this and put it down together because you can see it's crooked. It's wider at this end than at this end. This morning, my kids were talking about kangaroo ninjas. I don't know why. They were talking about kangaroo kung fu. They were like, do you want tree kangaroo kung fu or ground kangaroo kung fu? And I have no idea where they got kangaroo kung fu from. Anyways, and I was like, you would love Warriors of Virtue, which is a movie I grew up watching. I don't know about you guys, but I honestly, if I watched it again, it would probably feel like a fever dream. That was a really crazy tangent, and now I don't know where I'm at. I have boning channels to add in the center, in this, and then obviously fixing this boning channel, and I need to get down to it, so let's do it.
After politely shoving my sewing machine to the side, I was ready to try and figure out where I was going to put these boning channels into these stays. I went ahead and pinned those into place so that it wouldn't shift around while I went ahead and sewed them, and then I did just that. I went ahead and sewed them. I also seam ripped that end boning channel and re-sewed that down at this point. And when everything looked hunky-dory, I was ready to go ahead and cut my boning, which is actually oversized zip ties because I learned about that trick. And it made corsetry feel a lot more accessible to me for some reason. So that's what I generally do whenever I'm making stays or corsets. Maybe someday I will actually go out and buy boning that was intended for this purpose rather than industrial zip ties. But today is not that day. Now, tin snips or wire cutters would probably be a better choice for cutting these zip ties. As you can see, I do struggle through each and every one of them with these admittedly somewhat dull and inexpensive scissors. However, I did not feel like going and getting tin snips or wire cutters or any such thing. I had these scissors on hand, and so by golly, I was gonna use them. I was just going to use this red bias tape that I had lying around. I have a bunch of it for the edges of this, but I started zigzag stitching everything on the inside, and I couldn't help but think it looked like gingerbread. And so, derailment, these are now gonna be gingerbread stays. I need to get white bias tape for the edges, and then I'm going to zigzag stitch around the bust gores and probably in a few other places just to make it really stinking cute. And so there I go, just zigzag stitching my little heart out all around those bust gores. It may be too contrasty.
Oh, in brighter light, it's better.
We're gonna keep going. I mean, yeah, at this point, the damage has been done. And then I went ahead and I got my rickrack and I started planning out where that would all go. Honestly, I didn't feel like it needed too much, and this was an instance in which I felt that perhaps less is more. I did want to put some on the back, however, and I realized that the best place to put them would need to be right where those arm straps are, so I decided to go ahead and seam rip just a small section of that arm strap so that I could fit it in there and have it not look like absolute garbage with one end of my rickrack fraying. But yeah, no, we did it the proper way. It turned out nice. I just had to stitch down the center of the rickrack. I could have kind of zigzagged all the way down the rickrack, but I feel like just the center was plenty to hold it in place. It's just a decorative element anyways. Also, zigzag down the rickrack could be a cool band name. I don't know. If you didn't leave a comment earlier, this might be your chance to comment your favorite band name. You know, the name that you would name your band if you were ever to start up a band, that favorite band name. Or even just your favorite band name that you've heard. Anyways, as you can see in this footage, I am applying my bias tape all around the edges, just that nice white icing that goes around the edge of the gingerbread cookie. The bottom edge was very straightforward, but the top edge needed just a little bit extra work because it incorporates a little drawstring right around the center front of the chest. Surprisingly, that part went fairly smoothly and I didn't actually have to seam rip any of that like I thought I would have to. Just look at that satisfying drawstring action. Lastly, the final step is getting the grommets in place. I start things out by creating a little hole with a leather hole punch, and then I use my seam ripper to make it wide enough for these wide grommets because it just isn't wide enough otherwise. Yes, when that thief had stolen that cloak right out from under my nose, they'd gone too far. But they'd given me an idea.
You've stolen your last button.
You don't deserve this job. I'm 10 times the seamstress you are, and 30 times that of old Betsy. They never should have fired me.
Oh, is that so? Well, you shouldn't have been stealing from your employer. And for your information, I'm not a seamstress anymore. I don't take in dresses. I'm a detective now. I take in thieves. You're going to the clink. Say hello to Scraps for me. When I started this project, I had no clue that I was going to end up with gingerbread stays. I am absolutely tickled by it though. I love it. This chemise is incredible. The sleeves are huge. Got little buttons on it. It's very wide, so there's plenty of maneuverability in there. These stays are super freaking cute. I have no notes really. One of my notes might be that this fabric does have just a little bit of give to it. So I feel like it'll stretch over time and be a little bit too big on me. They fit me very well, I feel. I like the shape that they're giving. It's going to work for what I want. I love this chemise. I'm so happy how this turned out. If you liked anything about that video, please hit the like button. And if you would like to see more of what I do sewing videos, I do home improvement stuff, I do art, and then I'll just do random stuff. So please follow along and subscribe, and then I can see you in the next one. Bye. Yeah, it's, ooh, ooh. Yeah, yeah. I'm just a man made of gingerbread. How do I move back on track?